Get out before I call security. Natalie Winslow's voice cut through the glass-walled office, and the young assistant at the door went still. I was only trying to help. You moved my chair while I was on a call after I told you not to. You were blocking the doorway. Then you asked me to move. The assistant's eyes filled, but Natalie did not soften. Beyond the glass, half a dozen employees pretended not to listen. Marcus Vane did not pretend. He stood near the windows with his phone angled toward the floor, quietly recording. Another incident, he said after the assistant left. The board will hear about it. Natalie turned her wheelchair toward him. Then tell them the truth. Truth depends on who tells it first. Across the room, Evan Hartley was on one knee beneath Natalie's broken adjustable desk, tightening a connector that should have been replaced months ago. He had been in the office 22 minutes. Long enough to understand that people were afraid of Natalie, and longer than necessary to understand that Marcus enjoyed giving them reasons to be. You are still here? Natalie asked. The desk is still broken. Most people leave when I raise my voice. Most people were not hired to fix your desk. Marcus looked at Evan's worn work jacket, then at the toolbox beside him. Mr. Hartley, you are a contractor. It would be wise to remember that. Evan tested the switch. The desk moved an inch, shuddered, then stopped. I remember every morning when I send invoices. Natalie almost smiled. Evan reached behind the desk to check the power rail. His elbow caught the edge of a silver picture frame. It tipped, struck the carpet, and landed face down. Do not touch that, Natalie said. Evan froze. It fell. Leave it. He should have. Instead, he saw a thin crack spreading across the glass and lifted the frame carefully so it would not break further. When he turned it over, every sound in the office seemed to disappear. Beside her stood a woman in a blue Winslow safety jacket, one hand resting lightly on the bed rail. Evan knew the small scar near her eyebrow. He knew the crooked smile. He knew the silver wedding band he had bought when $20 had felt expensive. His fingers tightened around the frame. Where did you get this? Natalie stared at him. Why do you know her? Evan looked at the woman he had buried 4 years earlier. Because she was my wife. Rachel Hartley, Marcus said quietly. Evan turned toward him. Natalie did too. You knew her last name? She asked. Marcus straightened one cuff. Of course I did. Then maybe you can explain why my wife spent the last year of her life hiding Winslow files in our house. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Or perhaps, he said, you should ask what your wife was paid to keep quiet. On Monday morning, Evan stood at the kitchen table holding a notice from his mortgage servicer. The amount past due was $7,840. He had 10 days to bring the loan current before the account moved into formal foreclosure review. Is it bad? Abby asked from the other side of the table. Evan folded the notice. It is manageable. That means yes. It means your father needs more work. Abby watched him place the paper beneath a stack of utility bills. Are we moving? No. The answer came too quickly. Evan corrected himself. Not if I can help it. She slid a blue library book toward him. Family reading day is Friday at 10. I know. You promised. I know that too. Mom said promises are heavier than they look. Your mom said a lot of inconveniently smart things. Abby smiled. Evan packed her lunch, checked the zipper on her coat, and drove her to Willow Creek Elementary in his aging pickup. June Barrett called. She introduced herself as household manager for Natalie Winslow and said 3 systems at the Winslow residence had developed intermittent faults, an adjustable desk, 2 automated doors, and a private elevator. I was given your name by the Accessibility Service Network, June said. The job could run several days. Evan asked for the rate. June named a figure high enough to make him sit straighter. If the work lasted the week, the invoice would cover most of the mortgage arrears. Send the address. There was a pause. You know whose home this is? Yes. Rachel had worked at Winslow Technologies for 6 years. But grief. Did not pay a mortgage. At 11:52, his truck rolled through the gates of the Winslow estate north of Chicago. Marcus Vane met him under the front portico. Mr. Hartley. You will work only on the systems listed in the service order. You will not open private cabinets. You will not photograph equipment. You will not discuss Miss Winslow's medical history. I repair controls. I do not collect biographies. Marcus's expression did not change. And if Miss Winslow becomes difficult, call staff. Do not argue with her. Does she know you describe her that way? For the first time, Marcus looked directly at him. You need this contract, Mr. Hartley. I suggest you finish it. Evan wondered how Marcus knew what he needed. Before he could ask, the front doors opened. Natalie Winslow waited inside in a powered wheelchair, 33 years old, controlled posture, gray eyes that looked tired of people reaching conclusions before she spoke. She glanced at Evan's toolbox. You are the fourth contractor. I was told third. The second one came back to apologize. I counted him twice. Fair enough. If you waste my time, I will count you once. Evan set the toolbox down. Then show me what is broken. Natalie turned toward the elevator. Marcus stayed behind, watching Evan as if the repair had begun somewhere else. The elevator fault took Evan 14 minutes to find. The problem was a wireless maintenance bridge hidden behind the service panel, a device that allowed remote diagnostics even though the installation record said remote access had been disabled. Evan held it up. Who services your building network? Natalie frowned. Corporate operations. Marcus answered from behind her. The bridge is standard. Not when the owner was told remote access was off. Evan turned the module over. Natalie looked at Marcus. You told me the elevator glitches were mechanical. Because every service report said they were. This is not mechanical. Can you prove it caused the failures? Not yet. Then repair what you were hired to repair. Natalie looked from Marcus to Evan. Disable the bridge. Marcus stepped forward. That will remove emergency. Diagnostics. I did not ask what it removes. I said disable it. Evan waited. Do you want it physically disconnected or software locked? Natalie noticed the question. Physically disconnected. Done. The elevator ran 6 full cycles without stopping. The adjustable desk had a failing control board, but its bigger problem was obvious before he opened a panel. Who set this up? He asked. An architect who won 3 awards. Did he use your chair when he measured it? Natalie gave him a sharp look. No. Then he designed a photograph, not a workspace. Mr. Hartley. It is a measurement, not a revolution. Natalie surprised herself by laughing once. Evan lowered the desk 1.5 inches, shifted the controls, and asked Natalie to test each position. He asked left or right, higher or lower, automatic or manual. Nobody ever asks this many questions, Natalie said. That is strange for a company that sells adaptive technology. People think questions slow things down. Bad assumptions slow things down more. Evan's phone rang. Abby appeared on video, standing in the school office with her blue library book. You forgot to sign my reading sheet. Evan closed his eyes. It is Monday and I am already failing Friday. You can sign it tonight. Abby noticed Natalie behind him. Is that your customer? Yes. Natalie rolled closer before Evan could end the call. I am Natalie. Abby smiled. My mom used to work for your company. What was her name? Rachel Hartley. Evan saw something change in Natalie's face, but before he could ask, Marcus entered with a folder and said the board needed her immediately. Natalie left without explanation. On the corner of the desk, a silver frame reflected the winter light. He did not touch it. Not yet. The desk failure, the door delays, and the elevator faults all looked unrelated until he compared their maintenance logs. Each malfunction had occurred within hours of a board dispute involving Natalie. The private elevator stopped the morning she rejected a merger. The office door failed before she met an outside auditor. The desk controls reset the day she refused to sign an executive succession policy. Natalie watched him from the doorway. You are frowning at my house. Your house is frowning first. What does that mean? It means someone keeps installing remote access hardware in systems that are supposed to be local. Marcus says remote access protects me. From what? Being trapped if something fails. Evan looked at the disabled bridge in his hand. And who protects you from the person with remote access? Natalie did not answer. Later that afternoon, the argument with her assistant happened. Evan was under the desk when the picture frame fell. This time, when he turned it over, he did not merely see Rachel. He saw a missing year of his life. Rachel had been wearing the blue Winslow safety jacket she stopped bringing home after Natalie's accident. Evan's voice came out rough. Because she was my wife. Natalie stared at the photograph. Rachel never told me her last name. She worked for Winslow. She told me she had worked in safety, but Marcus said she left the company after the demonstration and wanted privacy. Evan looked at Marcus. You knew exactly who she was. Marcus did not deny it. Rachel signed confidentiality agreements like every engineer on that program. Natalie turned sharply. You told me she could not be located after she stopped visiting. Marcus's tone softened. You were in rehabilitation. Your father and I were trying to reduce stress. By lying. By respecting Rachel's request for distance. Evan looked at the photograph again. Rachel had visited Natalie for almost 3 months after the crash. 11 months later, she had died unexpectedly from a pulmonary embolism. He turned the frame over. A strip of blue paper was tucked beneath the backing. 4 words were written in Rachel's handwriting. Blue folder. Arthur knows. Natalie whispered, Arthur was my father. That is enough for today, he said. Evan held the frame out to Natalie. Your call. She took it. Marcus, leave. Natalie, you are upset. Then you should be relieved to get away from me. Marcus's jaw tightened. He walked out. Natalie stared at Rachel's note. My father's study has been sealed since he died. Why? Marcus said there were estate records under review. Evan looked toward the hallway. And you believed him? Natalie's eyes hardened. I believed everyone for a while. That was the problem. Arthur Winslow's study was on the west side of the estate behind a walnut door with a keypad Natalie had not used in 4 years. Her old code failed. June Barrett tried the master code. It failed too. Marcus changed the security system last winter, June said. Evan examined the lock. I can bypass it, but I need Natalie's authorization recorded on the work order. Marcus was not there to hear that. Natalie opened the service app on her phone and signed. Now it is authorized. 3 minutes later, the lock clicked. Arthur's books remained on the shelves, but the desk drawers were too neat. Natalie rolled slowly around the desk. He never left drawers empty. Evan crouched near the baseboard and found scratches beneath the lower cabinet, the kind made by a drawer that had been pulled out repeatedly. Behind it was a shallow compartment. Inside sat one blue folder. Rachel Hartley's name was typed across the first page. She looked at him. You found it. You own it. Natalie opened the folder. Rachel's engineering report described a fault in an adaptive steering controller scheduled for demonstration 5 years earlier. Under a specific combination of speed, sensor dropout, and software recovery, the steering actuator could accept a stale command for several seconds. Rachel had recommended postponing the demonstration. The second page was an email from Marcus Vane, then Chief Operating Officer, rejecting the delay until after a major investor event. Natalie read the date twice. That was 2 days before my accident. Rachel knew. She tried to stop it. The next document was from Arthur Winslow. He wrote that he had begun an independent review after learning Rachel's report had been removed from the official safety packet. He promised to bring the matter to the board once he had original server logs. The final page was missing. Natalie looked at the torn binding. Someone took it. A floorboard creaked outside. June opened the door. The hallway was empty. On the carpet lay a silver cuff link. Natalie recognized it. Immediately. Marcus wore the pair every day. He was here, she said. Evan closed the folder. Or someone wants you to think he was. You are defending him. No. I am telling you what the evidence proves. A cuff link proves a cuff link was on the floor. For the first time that day, Natalie breathed more slowly. Rachel would have liked you. She did, on most Tuesdays. Natalie almost smiled, but the moment ended when her phone lit up with a board notice. Emergency Leadership Review. Friday, 8 in the morning. Requested by Marcus Vane. Reason: concerns regarding executive stability, unauthorized system access, and external influence. Evan read the last 2 words again. External influence. Natalie looked at him. That means you. I figured. You can walk away. Evan thought of $7,840, Abby's reading day, and Rachel's name on the folder. Not before I finished the job I was hired to do. Marcus did not wait until Friday. Thursday morning, he entered Natalie's office with 2 attorneys and a leather folder. Evan was testing the newly isolated elevator circuit while June stood near the door. Marcus placed the folder on Natalie's desk. I asked independent counsel to review Mr. Hartley's access. Natalie did not touch it. Without telling me. Because this concerns you. Everything seems to concern me when you want control of it. One attorney opened the folder. Inside were payment records showing Rachel Hartley had received $84,000 from a consulting firm linked to a Winslow supplier after the accident. The second document was a service application submitted under Evan's contractor license 12 days before June had called him. It requested access to the exact systems now under investigation. Evan stared at his own digital signature. I did not submit that. Marcus continued. The application came from an address associated with your business account. I have one laptop. It was in my truck that week. Can you prove that? Evan looked at Natalie. He could see the wall rebuilding behind her eyes. Check the metadata, Evan said. Check the IP address. Check the certificate chain on the signature. Marcus turned to Natalie. A contractor with mortgage debt enters your home, gains private access, discovers documents involving his late wife, and suddenly claims the company conspired against both of you. If this were happening to another chief executive, what would you call it? Natalie looked at the payment record. Did Rachel ever mention consulting payments? No. Did she ever tell you she was investigating Winslow? No. Did you know there were company files in your house? Evan hesitated. I knew she kept a locked case after the accident. I never opened it. Marcus gave a small, almost sympathetic nod. Convenient. Do not ask her to believe me. Verify it. Natalie looked at him for a long time. Until I do, you are off the property. I will not make the same mistake twice. I will not hand control to Marcus, and I will not hand it to Evan because I want him to be right. Evan removed his temporary badge and placed it on the desk. Fair. Marcus had expected protest. He looked almost disappointed. Your final invoice will remain under review, he said. Evan's week of work was the money keeping his house out of foreclosure review. Evan met his eyes. You knew about the mortgage before I arrived. Evan picked up his toolbox. Natalie watched him leave, and for the first time since meeting him, she hated the fact that asking someone to go could feel so much like being abandoned. 2 customers had already cancelled after Winslow legal counsel contacted his insurer about a possible access violation. By the time he reached the house, his phone had 3 missed calls from the mortgage company and 1 from Abby's school reminding him about Friday's reading day. Abby sat on the living room floor surrounded by cardboard boxes. What are those? Mrs. Alvarez gave them to me. Why? Abby looked embarrassed. In case we move. Evan set the toolbox down. We are not packing tonight. You said not if you can help it. I can still help it. Did the rich lady fire you? He sat beside her. She told me to leave until she knows the truth. Is that the same as firing? It feels similar. Abby opened one box and pulled out Rachel's wooden music box. Painted with faded stars. Can I pack Mom's things myself? We are not packing, but yes. Abby turned the key. Halfway through, the mechanism caught. Abby shook it gently. Something clicked beneath the velvet tray. Evan removed 2 tiny screws and lifted the lining. A black storage drive was taped underneath. Rachel's initials were written on it in blue marker. The drive opened with a password prompt. Abby leaned over his shoulder. Try my birthday. It failed. Mom's birthday. Failed. Evan looked at the music box. Rachel used to call Abby her North Star. He typed North Star. The drive unlocked. Inside were duplicate safety reports, audio recordings, server exports, and a video dated 8 months after Natalie's accident. Rachel appeared on screen in their old kitchen after midnight. She looked exhausted. Evan, if you ever find this, I am sorry I did not tell you. Arthur and I believed someone inside Winslow was deleting the original records. I kept you out because I thought ignorance would keep you and Abby safe. Maybe that was wrong. Evan stopped the video, breathing hard. Keep going. Rachel continued. She explained that the $84,000 was not consulting income. It was a settlement payment Winslow's outside insurer had issued after Rachel threatened to report the suppressed safety finding. She had refused the confidentiality language and never deposited most of the money. Bank records were attached. She named the system used to create false contractor credentials, the executive access portal controlled by Marcus's office, then pointed to an off-site server archive maintained by Winslow's former data vendor. I have been waiting 4 years for someone to call about Rachel. Natalie sat alone at her desk reviewing the metadata from Evan's service application. The digital certificate had been generated from Marcus Vane's executive access account at 2:13 in the morning. Evan answered. She said only, I was right to verify you. He waited. And wrong about what I thought I would find. Those are different things. Can I come to your house? Yes. 40 minutes later, Natalie arrived without Marcus, without security, and without a corporate driver. Natalie entered Evan's house and immediately understood why the mortgage mattered. Coffee rings remained on the kitchen table. Abby's height marks climbed the pantry door in pencil. A photograph on the mantel showed Rachel laughing beside Lake Michigan with wind in her hair. Natalie stopped in front of it. She never told me she had a daughter. She kept Patience private from us, and us private from Patience. She sang this to me. Natalie turned the key, and the melody changed her face. She sang that after the accident. Abby sat very still. To you. At the hospital. I could not sleep. Everyone kept telling me what would happen next. Rachel was the only person who asked what I wanted to know first. Abby's voice became smaller. Was she scared? Natalie considered the answer. Yes. But she did not make me carry her fear. Rachel described the faulty steering controller, Marcus's order to proceed with the investor demonstration, and Arthur's attempt to preserve server evidence. Marcus had accepted a known safety risk because he believed the odds favored him. After the crash, he buried the warning to protect the company, then used Natalie's rehabilitation to consolidate operational authority. He did not need the accident to happen, Evan said. He only needed everyone to believe it was nobody's fault afterward. Rachel's notes pointed to an off-site archive with immutable backup logs. Thomas Keller joined them by video call. He confirmed Rachel had warned him before the demonstration and that Marcus threatened to cut the safety division's budget if the event was delayed. Thomas had resigned 2 months later. He had kept printed notes but no original server data. Natalie called an independent forensic firm instead of Winslow's internal technology team. It contained the original safety report, Marcus's email rejecting the delay, and access logs showing that Rachel's report had been removed from the board packet using Marcus's executive token. At 12:38, Marcus sent an emergency notice moving the board vote from 9 to 8 in the morning. At 12:41, a Chicago business site published a story, Struggling Contractor Gains Private Access to Billionaire CEO. The photograph showed Evan outside his house. Abby's upstairs window was visible behind him. He put my daughter in the story. Natalie read the article. It mentioned his mortgage arrears, Rachel's payment, and the forged service application. He is trying to make the evidence look like extortion before we present it. Evan looked at the clock. Abby's family reading day began at 10. The board vote began at 8. His mortgage deadline was the next day. Natalie noticed him looking at Abby. You do not have to come tomorrow. Evan shook his head. Do not make that decision for me. She stopped. You are right. I will be there. But I leave by 9:15. For the board. For my daughter. Abby, listening from the stairs, smiled and disappeared before either adult saw her. At 6:30 Friday morning, every television in the Winslow headquarters lobby carried some version of the same story. Marcus waited beside security with 2 attorneys and a printed court notice requesting preservation of all devices in Evan's possession. You are not entering the executive floors, he said. Natalie invited me. The board's emergency committee revoked contractor access. Natalie rolled out of the private elevator. Then he enters as my guest. This is exactly the dependency the board is concerned about. Natalie stopped 3 feet from him. Dependency is when someone cannot act without another person. I am acting against your advice. That seems fairly independent. Marcus held out his hand toward Evan. The storage drive. Evan did not move. It belongs to Rachel's estate. It contains Winslow data. Then your lawyers can argue about ownership after copies are preserved by independent counsel. Marcus lowered his voice. Your mortgage is due tomorrow. Your insurer has suspended your work. 2 customers cancelled. Give me the drive, sign a standard confidentiality agreement, and Winslow will settle your invoice today plus $100,000 for Rachel's old consulting dispute. You are offering me money in a lobby full of cameras. I am offering your daughter stability. No. You are buying the version of me your story needs. Pride will not keep a roof over her head. Evan stepped closer, not threatening, only refusing to shrink. Neither will teaching her that every promise has a price. He passed the drive to the independent forensic attorney beside Natalie. Chain of custody starts now. At 7:58, Natalie entered the boardroom alone. Evan remained outside with Thomas Keller and the forensic team until she called them. 12 directors sat around a glass table. Marcus stood beside a screen displaying charts of missed meetings, staff turnover, and operational incidents. This is not punishment, he began. This is risk management. Natalie moved to the head of the table. Then manage the right risk. Marcus presented first. He showed clips of Natalie firing staff, records of cancelled investor calls, the forged service application under Evan's name, Rachel's $84,000 payment, and the morning's media coverage. Natalie was vulnerable, emotionally compromised by the rediscovery of the woman connected to her accident, and being influenced by a contractor in financial distress. One asked Natalie whether she would submit to temporary executive leave while the claims were investigated. Natalie answered, "No. But I will submit every claim in this room to evidence." She showed the metadata proving Evan's application had been generated through Marcus's executive portal. Marcus replied that executive portals could be delegated. She showed Rachel's bank records proving the payment was an insurer settlement and that most of it had never been deposited. Marcus said that did not authenticate her safety claims. Correct. So we authenticated them. The doors opened. Evan entered with Thomas Keller and Maya Chen, lead examiner from the independent forensic firm. Maya displayed the off-site archive records with timestamps, file hashes, and access history. Rachel's original report existed before the crash. Marcus's email rejecting the delay existed before the crash. Rachel's report disappeared from the board packet using Marcus's token after the crash. Marcus stood. A token is not a person. Agreed, Maya said. That is why we checked the login source. Device certificate, and multi-factor record. All three map to your executive workstation and your registered security key. The room changed. Thomas confirmed the threats against the safety division. Then Natalie played Rachel's final video. Rachel's voice filled the boardroom. The accident was not planned. That matters. But knowing a system can fail and choosing the schedule anyway is still a choice. Hiding that choice afterward is another one. Marcus interrupted. She was ill. She was angry at the company. Natalie answered. My father believed her. She played Arthur Winslow's recording from Rachel's drive. Arthur described his independent review and named Marcus as the executive who blocked access to the original safety packet. He also described a second concern. After Natalie's rehabilitation began, Marcus repeatedly requested expanded control over her office systems under an emergency continuity policy. I approved that authority temporarily, Arthur's recording said. I did not approve permanent control over my daughter's communications or mobility systems. When the recording ended, nobody moved. Marcus looked around the table. You are going to remove me based on the recordings of 2 dead people and the word of a contractor who needs money? Natalie looked at Evan, then back at Marcus. No. We are going to suspend you based on authenticated records, independent witnesses, and your own access history. The dead people are simply the reason we finally looked. She requested Marcus's immediate suspension, outside legal review, restoration of her system permissions, and a forensic audit of every executive continuity action taken after the accident. The first vote was not unanimous. 2 directors abstained. 1 voted against. Then the chair announced the motion had passed. He gathered his folder. As he reached the door, Natalie stopped him. You spent 4 years telling people my anger made me unreliable. Marcus turned. Sometimes it did. Natalie held his gaze. Maybe. But my wheelchair never made you honest. Security escorted him from the executive floor. Evan checked the clock. 9:17. He had promised Abby 10 o'clock. Evan reached Willow Creek Elementary at 9:56 carrying the same blue library book Abby had handed him Monday morning. When she saw him, her whole face changed. You made it. Evan held up the book. Promises are heavy. Mom said that. I know. There was only Abby leaning against his shoulder and correcting him when he skipped a line. Outside the school, Natalie was parked at the curb with June. You came here. I asked Abby's teacher if visitors were allowed. Abby grinned. She asked first. Natalie handed Evan an envelope. If that is money, it is your invoice. The independent committee released payment for completed work. Nothing more. The amount covered the mortgage arrears with enough left to replace the leaking section of roof. Marcus froze this. Yes. And you unfroze it. No. The committee did after June documented the work and the forensic team confirmed you did not cause the failures. Evan looked at June. She shrugged. Paperwork can occasionally be useful. Evan paid the past due amount directly to the mortgage servicer. He kept the house because he had earned enough to keep it and because the man trying to stop payment had lost the authority to do so. The investigation widened. Winslow disclosed Rachel's suppressed report and formally restored her name to the safety record. The company admitted that Natalie had been denied access to meetings and systems under policies that had never been independently reviewed. Marcus faced civil and criminal investigations for falsifying records, unauthorized system access, and obstruction. Natalie changed how the company worked. Accessibility reviews would include disabled employees with voting authority. Emergency access to personal mobility or communication systems required independent approval and visible audit logs. No executive assistant could move a person's wheelchair without consent except in an immediate safety emergency. 6 months later, the Rachel Hartley Center for Accessible Design opened on the north side of Chicago. It was named because she had written down a risk when powerful people wanted silence, and because she had treated Natalie like a person before the company remembered how. Evan joined as independent design director under a contract reviewed by outside counsel. Abby spent Saturday mornings in the workshop drawing impossible inventions and asking engineers why every button had to be gray. Natalie found Evan lowering a shelf in her new office. That shelf was installed yesterday. It is 4 inches too high. The architect has an award. We have had this conversation. She laughed. On the desk stood 2 photographs. The first showed Rachel beside Natalie in rehabilitation 5 years earlier. The second showed Natalie, Evan, and Abby in the center's garden after planting white roses. Abby had taken it with Rachel's old instant camera. Why keep both? Evan asked. Because she gave me the truth before I was ready to hear it. And you two gave me something different. What? A life where nobody has to disappear for somebody else to matter. Natalie reached across the desk, palm open. Abby entered carrying 3 paint samples. Good. You are both here. The walls are terrible. What is wrong with them? They are the color of oatmeal. Evan studied the wall. She has a point. Natalie shook her head. I built a center for independent choice and immediately lost control of the paint. Abby smiled. That is democracy. But Marcus no longer controlled the story by telling it first. Rachel's warning was public. Natalie's authority was hers. Evan had kept the home his daughter remembered without selling the lesson he wanted her to carry into adulthood. And on the corner of Natalie's desk, beside 2 photographs and a stack of Abby's drawings, a small handwritten card carried the only rule the center needed: ask first. Listen fully. Then build.